Trigger Witch is made by the same developer that made the RPG LBRY. LBRY was a pocket-sized RPG that threw back to the retro yesteryear in terms of graphics, but also in terms of simplicity of how an RPG works. And it was really accessible, simple to pick up and play, and short. So it was a succinct experience, so you didn't have the time to get bored. Copy and paste that idea and move it into an RPG that uses a twin-stick shooter way of dealing with enemies, and that's what you've got with Trigger Witch. It's simple to pick up and play, easy to understand. It doesn't break the mould in any particular gameplay elements, but it does what it does exceptionally well. And because it's simplistic and easy to pick up, although you're not going to have tons and tons of depth, the whole experience is designed to be done in 5 to 6 hours, so therefore you stop at the point of where you're starting to get overly familiar with something, and so you don't get the chance to become bored. Trigger Witch primarily works as a twin-stick shooter. You play as a witch and she got guns and she gonna use them. You can completely rotate 360 degrees for shooting with the right stick. I did find though that the bullets seem to come out in lanes, so it's not a true 360 rotation around what you can do. But it's fluid and it's quick and it's easy. You can have a laser sight on or off if you want to as well for extra additional support. Reloading happens automatically, but you can manually trigger it should you want to, and I generally recommend that for when you're moving between sections of the map. Each room seems to be about 3 to 4 TV screens wide, if that makes sense. And so what you're doing is moving through like chunks of a map as you go around either the dungeon or the world map, exploring and finding out all of the nooks and crannies of what's going on. And the game is largely split into overworld travelling between locations, and there's lots and lots of little mini places. Half the world map is cut off in the start of the game, but after the initial kind of conversations, you can move around the bottom half of the world map in any way and shape that you want as you work your way towards goals. So it lends itself to being interesting and varied, as you can choose different paths to get around. Then once you hit the dungeon that you need to get into, that's where the crux and the difficulty side of the game kind of comes into play. The dungeons are a step up over anything that you do in the overworld, and they're designed like mini mazes, so you'll need to try and find a map to begin with to get that area sussed out, and then you'll slowly paint in that map, going around trying to find keys to open doors. My only kind of downside to Trigger Witch across all of the entire game is that some of these dungeons feel a little bit too mazy for their own good, and it involves a little bit of backtracking. I said that the game probably for most people will take 5 to 6 hours to complete, maybe 6, 7, 8 if you're slower. It took slightly longer for me because I ended up missing some of the keys in the dungeons early on, so I had to backtrack quite a bit. So just keep your eyes peeled, because if you're like me and you miss the odd treasure chest here and there because they look slightly out of the way, or you can see them but you can't work out how to get to them from that room, you're going to need to get to most of it. And so keep an eye out for little hidden paths and arenas here and there. The difficulty actually of the shooting and the enemies is not difficult, but it does ramp up in busy rooms of challenges, because quite often doors will lock and then you've got like waves of enemies coming at you. The twin stick shooting works perfectly fine, and you can switch between up to, I think there's 4 guns by the time you complete the game. And they are upgradable through finding secret upgrading tools and then spending gems that you collect from killing enemies on them. You can upgrade the weapons by damage, rate of fire, and also clip for reloading guns. So you can almost turn your rocket launcher into an Uzi 9mm by sending off lots of different things at once. The second gameplay mechanic for the game is a invisible dash, or invisibility dash, and dash makes you faster than when you run, so you just spam it as you go around all of the different dungeons, but it also gets you out of tight situations, because a lot of the enemies in Trigger Witch are designed to rush at you, and quite a lot of them have like bomb structure to them, so if you're going to kill them they have a blast radius of damage that they can cause. So thinking back to how traditional twin stick shooters play, you'll always be kind of dashing backwards and trying to aim your bullets around like wherever you're going to and where you want to kind of preconceive your shooting to be. And the same is true of Trigger Witch as well. Does it revolutionise the world? Absolutely not. Is it fun to play though? Yes. And that's the main thing with Trigger Witch. Outside of that, the story is perfectly serviceable. It's not going to be something that you'll write home about. I did like the kind of, how do I say it? It's not fourth wall breaking, but it's knowing that it's dealing with RPG tropes and is quite prepared to send them up in a comical fashion. It's missing the nod and wink to the camera or to the TV or to the player to say like, aren't we clever, we're breaking the fourth dimension. But it's using tired old tropes on purpose to make it be silly and slightly bitchy as it goes through the gaming experience itself. I also really liked that in between some of the levels, and particularly around boss battles, there's normally like a top-down shooter element. And this is where you get on a broomstick as a witch and fly forward. And so it turns into a traditional 2D shoot 'em up for a little while as enemies float across the screen and you have free movement to move around Space Invader style, trying to shoot everything down as well. It was a nice change of pace. I would have liked a few more of them actually throughout the game because they only pop up occasionally, but it does quite a bit to break up a lot of the more traditional arena-based twin stick shooting that you have in the game. So do I recommend Trigger Witch? In essence, yes I do, but it's for a quite specific audience. It's for people who are looking for a simple, easy to pick up arcade-style RPG. If you like twin-stick shooters but want something hardcore, this probably isn't for you unless you want like a chilled-out version of something. But what I would say is that this suits, for me, a specific demographic, which I think I fall into. We grew up with the retro 80s, 90s games of a certain eras. We've now sadly got full-time jobs and responsibilities and are generally bored with adulting in life. And so these give concise experiences that are not just like an hour or two, they're meatier than that, but they're not an effort to be like, right, I'm going to do a 40-hour RPG now. And that's what Trigger Witch does really well. It takes all of the elements that we remember from our past, puts it into a concise experience and says, there you go, 30 and 40-year-olds, have some retro fun in a meaty experience that's not needing to take over your life. Written review will be over on higherplayinggames.com. One last thing that I want to mention, you can blood splatter everywhere, but I turned it off and turned it to glitter, so that's probably why my gameplay looks slightly different to everyone else's. You can have the option, if you prefer blood on your screens, go nuts. If you found this review informative, please do give it a like, and if you like finding out about new and interesting games that other people do not cover nearly as often, please subscribe to Higher Playing Games because it's a treasure trove of games that you never knew existed and now you might just want. Take care all. Bye bye. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.